Okay.
Welcome everyone. This is our first bi-weekly call. It's going to be fun. Our goal here is to share with everyone use cases, architectures, and an effort that we have at Red Hat, but we're open to others participating in. We engage with customers and partners on a thing called validated patterns. And the onus of this is really, as a community, we're building out use cases, demos, and architectures that meet a business need. So with that, we wanted to set up a forum that we can talk through what we're doing, let others discuss architectures that they've created. We, inside of this organization, Red Hat, we also have portfolio architecture and solution patterns. We have a number of initiatives that just want to talk about the use cases that they're generating and how they can be beneficial. Putting things together in a specific way, people may have differences, which is the goal of this, is to discuss what's the pros and cons of a specific architectural decision. We have a number of folks on the call that are experts. I'm just here because, well, I'm not even really sure why I'm here. This is our initiative from a product manager perspective. That's my role in this, but it really is to introduce people that are smarter than me. So pretty much everyone that has their picture up, you can see the smart ones in the room. In this case, we're going to do a demo today and show you how the Validated Patterns Initiative works, how we can go from the very beginning of a deployment, creating things, to pushing out the bits. As we go through, if you have questions, feel free to add them to the chat. We'll take notes. I believe that because Michael has his suit jacket on, he volunteered to take the notes, but he's also on an iPad, I think, so it may be difficult. If you want to pitch in and help, that's also appreciated. We're not going to go around the room and say our names and roles and stuff. If you have a point as we're going through, feel free to interrupt or drop your question in the chat and we can track them, as William just said, and include them in the doc. This is meant to be an open dialogue, so we're not trying to just pontificate. That was my word of the day. I just had to use it. So interrupt as you like, but the goal is to share, and that's what we're doing here. Michael, please.
I was just going to say there's a hands up button down on the bottom. So if you need to interrupt, you can always hit the hands up button.
Thank you. And this is supposed to be conversational. We're supposed to engage. We're going to try to have as pleasant of a time as we can talking about architecture. This is not an architectural review board. So the goal isn't to pull apart these things, but to understand why we're making decisions. Feel free to engage. And with that, any questions? See, I didn't think so. It was just so compelling that it's just silence. Awesome. Jonny, I know you had set up to run through a demo. Anything you want to set out as a precursor, talk through?
So I'm going to go kind of like, I'm going to start at the beginning for those that aren't acclimated or, indoctrinated to the patterns at all. And so just going to walk through, progressively get like deeper, right? And I'm going to try, and I'm not going to go super deep because I think that we can kind of get lost in some of the things. But at the same time, what's up, Peggy? At the same time, we can go down rabbit holes. So if you have a question about something, like Anthony said, feel free to jump in and ask, because the only way we're going to know that you have questions is if you ask them, right? So like just feel free. And plus, I love the interaction. So yeah, that's it. You want me to just kick it off?
What's the use case we're talking about today?
Yeah, so I'm just going to walk through the MultiCloud GitOps validated pattern. And so we're really just going to go over the directory structure, the prerequisites for the repository, so like what we consider best practices, and then we're gonna go through a demo. And I'm gonna do a demo on the console, where we go through and we deploy the patterns operator, and then we deploy an instance of that pattern and kind of discuss some of the pros and cons. And then I'm gonna do another demo of like a make install, where we actually pull the repo locally and then we run the make install on it. So that way we can kind of see, like, all right, hey, this is what it's supposed to look like, and here's why we typically do it this way, or here's why we might even recommend you to do it this way. And then after that, we're going to try and add an operator to it. So just a real quick, like add a subscription, maybe add a new project and stuff like that within the values file, and then push it up, and then we can see it in Argo. We're not going to do any like deep configuration because I don't think we have enough time, but just to kind of give you the idea of like, okay, let's describe something. Let's describe how we want this cluster to look, and then let's actually go apply it, and then let's see what it looks like when it's done. So I guess I'll start going.
Please. I just tossed into the chat a link to the MultiCloud GitOps pattern. It isn't the GitHub link, but it shows you all the information as far as the architecture.
Perfect. That's perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my window here. All right, and so like the easiest place to start is with our documentation. And so if you go to validatedpatterns.io, like this is the landing page for everything. So you can see that we have drop downs for our available patterns. If you need to get more information on how to learn how to use them, if you want to contribute, we also have a blog, and then like the status, right? And this is really like our CI page. So one of the core things of a validated pattern is once it becomes a validated pattern at Red Hat, it's continuously tested, each of those operators through each version of OpenShift that gets released. So we're testing across GCP, Azure, and AWS. Then we're also testing the operators as they're coming out. So if there's like a new release of OpenShift OpenShift pipelines or ODF or something like that, then we're also testing that. And we're also working on some pre-release things, so that way we can catch bugs in the operators before they actually make it to you, the customer, right? Like that's the goal, is to try and help minimize the blowback from a bug that you might see. And then the pattern that we're going to use today is called MultiCloud GitOps. So I'm just going to jump over to, if you look, it's /pattern/MultiCloud GitOps. And it kind of goes over the CI status of it, and then the prerequisites. So the idea behind the patterns is, or really, I don't want to say the idea, but like really, we want you to bring your own cluster. We don't want to be in the cluster building, in the cluster building game, right? We want you to have that cluster already provisioned, and then you have the appropriate permissions, which generally to install an operator, you have to have cluster admin or some elevated privilege to be able to install that subscription and the additional CRDs. This pattern is really just based off of OpenShift GitOps, Advanced Cluster Manager, and we also add some special sauce in with HashiCorp Vault and External Secrets Operator. So we store the secret in Vault, and what happens is ESO, or the External Secrets Operator, converts that Vault key into an actual Kubernetes secret, and then puts it on a cluster and makes it available for use. So the first thing, let's just go over like a quick demo. The architecture that we have. So the Commons 0 cluster is going to be our core hub cluster group, and then Commons 1 is going to be the cluster that we import. So imagine this is like your production cluster, and then Commons 1 would be like maybe your development cluster, or maybe it's an edge cluster that you have somewhere, or it's just another data center that you have that you want to manage through your production cluster. And the console demo, this again is just, it's a way so we can show you how to deploy the pattern operator through the UI, and not having to worry about pulling anything locally. You just run, you just go through Operator Hub and install the operator. Generally, we build the workers with M5 2XL. You can stretch this a little bit, but the issue is that you have things like ACM and OpenShift GitOps, which are kind of resource intensive. And so we just, to err on the side of caution and to make sure that we have enough compute to add some of these other things that we want, we just make them a little bit beefier. You'll notice here on the console demo that it's just got the 3 workers, and that's because we're using Hypershift, or hosted control plane. So the control plane is actually hosted in another cluster that would be over here. It's just a black box in the cloud somewhere, and it's got the control plane project, which has all those resources, and then that way we can only focus on our workloads. And again, because we don't want to be in the install business, but we do want you to have your own cluster. I created a gist that you can use. It's just an install config, or an install-config.yaml that you can use to run the OpenShift create.
Jonny, you're back on the meeting.
Yep, I'm going back. I was just
okay.
I'm moving.
Okay.
But you can see it's just a normal. If you've never looked at this before, this is a normal install config for AWS. You'll just need to update anything that's pretty much in caps, right? So your DNS subdomain, the size of your worker nodes or the size of your control plane nodes. You got every cluster deserves a name.
Can you make it bigger?
Yeah.
Can you do a plus? Yeah. There you go. Much better.
Is that better? Okay. Yep. And so as of 4.13, the default SDN is OVN Kubernetes. And so, just go ahead and update that. So if you're using anything like 4.12 or anything, I think 4.12, you can still use this. But 4.13 and on, you should be using OVN Kubernetes, because I think in 4.14, it's the OVN or the OpenShift SDN is deprecated. And then again, just whatever region your cluster is in, so US East 2, US East 1, and then your pool secret that you can get from console.redhat.com. And then finally, if you want to have your SSH key, your public key on there, you would just copy and paste your public key in this section down here. So we take the approach of I guess I'll wait. So let's go to the console for the console demo. And bam, copy that. Come on, little buddy. All right, and this is a brand new cluster, so I've literally done nothing to this cluster except install it. And I mentioned that because if you're looking at this and you're like, why is he using kubeadmin? Is because there's literally nothing on here. So if we go to operators and we look at installed operators, we can see that it is super fresh. So one thing I did kind of skip over, and I'm going to go back to right now, is our GitHub repo. So if you go to github.com/validated patterns, this is where you'll find all of our validated patterns. So and the one that we're using today is MultiCloud GitOps. So if you want to take a look at any of these patterns that we already have out there, go ahead and let us know if you have any problems with them, or if you need some help getting them installed. We'd love to help you out. So jumping back over to our cluster here, I'm going to go to operators and then operator hub, and I'm just going to search for validated patterns. And then I'm just going to click install. Now, if you've installed an operator before, you know that generally installing an operator is just installing the API access to those resources. So it doesn't actually, most times it doesn't actually deploy anything. So you have to go in and you have to create an instance of it after it's been created. So we're going to enable the API for the validated patterns, and then we're going to go and create an instance of that pattern for MultiCloud GitOps. Now, some of the pros of doing this is that it's super easy, right? You just go through a user interface and you click some buttons. It's very clicky. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory as you're walking through things. But some of the cons is that if you want to use a secret, the operator itself doesn't know how to access the values-secret files that we use for the external secrets template. And once I get into the command line part of that, I'll start to explain why that matters. But yeah, and that's pretty much the only con, is that you don't really get access to the secrets. I don't know if Marty or William, if you have any other points of view on it, but I think pretty much it's like the pro is that it's super easy. The con is that you have to take an extra step really to get your secrets injected into the cluster.
Yeah, I would just say that most of us do the deployment of the pattern operator, the validated patterns operator, from the command line, and Jonny will show that to you as well, how we do it that way. But just so you know that there is a validated pattern operator, it's in the catalog. It does deploy patterns. It can't get access to your secrets because those secrets are stored on your local hard drive. So we have to do that extra step of loading them. It's a loading process that happens automatically when you do the install from the command line.
Yep. Awesome. All right, so now that we've got the operator installed, we can see that we have a pattern API. So let's go ahead and create an instance of it. And I'm just going to call this if I could spell commons, MCGO demo. And I'm just going to leave cluster group the same. And for git config, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to use the validated patterns repo. Oh my gosh, I can't spell. And I'm doing this because I'm not going to change anything. I'm not going to upload any secrets. I'm not going to make any changes to the actual repo itself. And so because I'm not going to do that, there's really no need. So like just to pull down the repository and deploy this pattern instance, it's just to show you that it's pretty simple to do.
But Johnny, if someone was doing this themselves and they were planning to modify this, they would point to their own.
Yep, and exactly. And when I go to the command line stuff, I'm gonna walk through forking and doing all that stuff. So, yep. And so one of the cool things that we just added is this multi-source config, and this allows us to have we can use values from different sources now. So that way, you know, say we don't have to have all of our config in one place. We can actually have a config sitting out in another repository, and we can point to it, and it just makes it very nice when you have maybe you have like a base config that you want to use on an operator or on a subscription or an instance, and then maybe there's something that you want to add from like another repo, and so you can pull that in. Same thing with apps and stuff like that. So it's a pretty nice feature. It'll be great when it's really fleshed out. But right now, just know it's there and it's awesome. So we just click create, and we can see that it's created this pattern called Commons MultiCloud GitOps / demo. And then if we go over to workloads, and just, excuse me. Yeah, here we go. So we can see things starting to get created. We can see the GitOps controller. So what's happening is when the patterns operator gets deployed, and now I can use this picture because I didn't want to confuse you earlier. So when we run the patterns operator, it creates an Argo instance. Inside that Argo instance, it's creating all the cluster scoped resources. So the application for Argo, the projects for Argo, not to be confused with OpenShift projects, namespaces, operator subscriptions, and operator groups and stuff like that. And then it's also generating another Argo CD instance, and that's going to be for everything else, right? So we've got this Argo of Argo configuration. So we have this hub, Argo CD, doing all the cluster level things, and it's deploying another Argo that's doing all of the application things, right? And this is going to be like your glue code, so configurations, config maps, secrets, deployments, all that stuff. Maybe like any extra like special configs that you might need, like maybe a stateful set or whatever for your application. You'd do all of that at this level. Now these names, they're a little confusing. And really what the idea is like hub here is really not like ACM, right? It doesn't mean ACM at all. This is the name of the cluster group. And then this cluster is just the name of the additional namespace. So it's just saying, hey, look, within the cluster, here's the thing that you deploy the apps onto. So it's a little confusing. We're working on it. Names are hard, and we're learning that like it's a little confusing. So we're working on a better naming solution. But just remember, Argo of Argos, right? So a tiered deployment, and then our applications. We have a core application here, and it's the app of apps model, right? So we deploy like a MultiCloud GitOps application, and then that deploys the subsequent applications within Argo. And we can see that by going up to this little 9-box thing. Hopefully the route's ready. All right, now this is completely normal. Now Argo is on a reconciliation loop, so it takes it's 3 minutes, and so we probably caught it right at the beginning. So what we can do is we can be impatient and we can do a refresh, and now we can see that we've got our core application, right, which is this Commons MCGO demo hub, and then we've also got our other applications. So we have ACM, we have config demo, Golang external secrets, hello world, balls, right? These are all just applications. So again, you start seeing that tiered deployment. So you have your app of apps, right? So your app of Commons MCGO would be like the config demo, and then within config demo, you can see that it's deploying secrets, it's deploying services, endpoints, and stuff like that. If we go back over to our OpenShift console, we should see that the second, I clicked on the wrong one. Sorry about that. See, I think I even got my naming wrong here when I was doing my diagram. Damn you, dyslexia. All right, so we have within ACM, it's just taking some time to sync because we're deploying all these different resources. So when we deploy through the UI, because config demo can't actually get the secrets, or really because Vault and external secrets operator can't get the secret, config demo is gonna be unhealthy, so it won't work completely, and that's because it needs that secret file to ingest and be there, right? Because it needs that key value stored within the Vault. So I think from the UI perspective, I think that's pretty much it. Did you, William or Marty, want to add anything to this? Like, I think it's pretty much like, from a UI perspective, I think it's good.
There's a question from Dwayne that's really, really good. What is the single source of truth?
The single source of truth is Git, right? So when we look at...
But which files? Do you want to talk about those files?
Are you talking about the values files?
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, let me just give me a second to get there,
yep.
Wayne. But if we look, here's where we're pulling this from. So our single source of truth is this. It's this this repository. And since we're on main, right, we're saying, hey, look, if you go to validated patterns, MultiCloud GitOps, and you look at the main branch, that's what we're deploying. Now, if we start looking at, actually, let me stop here on the UI demo, and I'll start the command line stuff. Does that work? So what I'll do is, if I go to MultiCloud GitOps, so again, github.com, validated patterns, MultiCloud GitOps, and I click use this template. And you can fork it, but because I've already got it forked, it won't sync over to mine. So I'm just going to do commons demo, and I'm just going to make it public.
So Johnny, why are you doing that? Because?
Why am I using the template?
No, why are you actually doing the template?
Oh, yeah. So I'm using the template so that way I can make changes to the repo. So that way I can you know, make it personal, right? I can mold it to what I need it to be. So the idea behind the patterns is it's not meant to solve all the world's problems, right? It's meant to get you most of the way there, right? So you're not going to use config demo in production. Let's just be honest, like, or hello world. Those are not apps that you're probably going to use in production. So you take this and you'd say, hey, look, I've got this base framework now that's been tested. You know, it's been run through the gauntlet of CI testing. And now I want to add my subscriptions. I want to add my applications to it. And I want to use GitOps to deploy these things. And we use a combination of OpenShift, GitOps, and ACM to make that happen. And so I'm just going to give my terminal here. Let's see, boom. So I see your question, and the answer is yes, right? You could use it to use it to do pretty much anything, right? Where it gets a little tricky is when you start having to replace things or patch things. Like I think that's where like GitOps is a little funky, but you know, there's ways around it. Like we support Helm. We want people to use Helm because of the templating within the charts, but we support customize as well. So if you have overlays and stuff like that, and yeah, basically like anything day one and beyond, you can pretty much do with the patterns. Now before I get going too far now, because now I'm getting excited, but you know, some of the things too are like there's a lot of imperative things that we have to do still with OpenShift, right? Like not everything is GitOps friendly, and not everything's like super automation friendly. And so if you've ever deployed ODF outside of the console, then you know that you have to label the nodes that you want to be storage nodes. And so what we did is we created a job that will, with RBAC, right, the role-based access control, that will go out and we say, hey, go find these nodes with this label and then label them storage nodes. Right now we're cheating, we're just using all the workers, but we're basically saying, hey, go find all the workers and make them storage nodes. But if you had infra nodes, you could just swap that label out and then apply it to that infra node, or maybe you had storage nodes and you could apply it to that. And then what that does is it marks those nodes and it makes them ready. So when you actually install your storage system or your storage cluster in ODF, ODF knows where to deploy the resources to. So with that imperative action though, that's a one-off. But what if you have something that you need to run continuously? Like maybe you have a HashiCorp vault sitting in your cluster that you want to keep the vault open, or you want to keep it unsealed for maybe, during the workday or whatever. I don't know if you'd ever do that, but so what we've done is we've created this imperative framework where you can actually implement some of these jobs or some of these ideas or these imperative actions into your GitOps deployment, so that way you can do that. And that cron job runs every 5 or 10 minutes, and it will continuously, like a cron, it'll run every whatever time limit you give it, it will run. And maybe you're backing up a database, or maybe you're backing up something, or you're moving files around, you're getting the status of something, right? You can use that imperative framework for those things. The other thing is I just created this repo called Commons Demo. So if I pull it down, so if I do git clone, that's what I get for trying to type while you're watching. Oh, what? There we go. All right, can everybody see this? Or is that better?
That's much better.
Okay. So, Dwayne, when you're asking about source of truth, right? Like the source of truth is always Git, right? Like hands down, bar none, like, full stop, the source of truth is Git. Now, when you're talking about like, what's the source of truth for this cluster, or like, how do I declare these applications, or how do I describe what a cluster looks like? We use the values files the values files feature from Helm. So the very first one that we do is we have hub, right? So if we look at values hub, what we do is we describe our cluster group, and cluster group is really it's a reference to our to the validated patterns framework, right? It's where the core application templates and subscriptions and stuff like that live. So the OpenShift GitOps resources, the ACM policies and ACM subscriptions and stuff like that. Not just ACM, but the subscriptions and operator groups and namespaces and stuff like that. So like that's really the framework that all of this stuff kind of like builds on top of. And so like that's when we talk about cluster group, that's really what we're talking about. It's that reference back to common. At least that's the easiest way for me to think about it. So when I'm creating a new cluster, we need to describe what that cluster is going to look like, and we do that by going through these values files. And so we created a list of namespaces. So we're saying, hey, OpenShift GitOps, create these namespaces for me, and then we're saying create these subscriptions. Now subscriptions in this case are the operator resources. So like go out and create the ACM resource called Advanced Cluster Management and put it in this namespace, Open Cluster Management. And then here's the channel that I want you to use. And the thing about the channel is you don't always have to define a channel. A lot of operators have a default channel that you can use. But if you need to start somewhere, like then it's always good to declare. And once you go disconnected, it's going to be like almost imperative that you declare something, so that way you're always getting like the version that you expect. And then we declare a list of projects, right? So projects are Argo CD resources, and this is just a way for Argo to keep resources together, right? So everything that would maybe be in the hub project or related to the hub project would be in the hub project. Anything related to config demo would be in the config demo project. They don't necessarily have to be separate, but it's just nice to have them in their own little application project. And this feature here is something new that like Marty and Michaela and Lester and the team have really been working hard on, and it's this shared values files. And this kind of gives you like if you've ever done Helm templating, you know that you can't call a variable within a values file, and you get into like a cyclical loop and stuff like that, and it won't let you, it won't do it. And so what we've done is we've created some of these in templates, and we've made them templates so that way you can actually declare these things as variables, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a lookup kind of feel, but it allows you to be more dynamic in your values files than statically assigning things. And then now we're starting to get into our application descriptions, right? So now we're defining what applications we want deployed to our hub cluster, right? Or our hub cluster group name. And so we have a little map here, and just the starting key, we're going to just calling the app ACM. We're telling it what namespace to go to, which Argo project it's going to be a part of, and where within the repository this app, like the app content for this live. What was the question?
Actually, I should have pressed it a little bit later.
Oh.
Finish with ACM first.
Okay, yeah. So and then this stuff right here that you're seeing, like this ignore differences. This is really so when you're doing CI, like a nice basic test is everything healthy and synced, right? Because of the way that Argo tracks resources, when like ACM gets deployed, it might be out of sync because it might have an extra field within the config or within the manifest that's on the cluster. And so we're telling Argo, like, listen, if you see the logging CA and it's different, just don't worry about it, right? That's not your business. Worry about something else. And what that does is that allows the application to be presented as healthy and synced, which is all green. And so a nice simple CI check is, OC get apps, and then you get the status from that, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. So that's when you see this ignore differences, that's really what we're doing is we're saying, hey, don't worry about this resource, that you don't be bothered by it. So go ahead, William.
I'm just going to say I see Vault there and Golang external secrets, and there's operators for those, but I noticed you didn't put them into subscriptions. Why is that?
Yep. So Vault and ESO, they do both have operators, but right now we're overriding some of the things that are in there. And with Vault specifically, like we're creating custom policies and stuff like that for passwords. And with ESO, we're doing some modifications on the charts, and then we're pushing that in. That's why we're not going directly to the operator. Lester, I don't know if you have more information on that or not. Like I don't want to just start vomiting a bunch of BS.
No, I think that's correct. I mean, there's a lot of things that we do inside of. So we have separate Helm charts for Vault and for Golang external secrets because we do have certain policies that play into the pattern, right? By the way, those two applications are, they're not required if you don't want to have them part of your pattern, but Vault is the way we do secrets management, and Golang external secrets basically it abstracts you from Vault because we can actually use Golang external secrets to, if you have the AWS key management, you can use that as well and configure it. So yeah, that's why they're there in this demo. They're there because we use them.
Yep. And just a good point that he was making, like they're Vault, you don't have to have them, right? Like they're optional. We heavily recommend that you use a secrets management something, right? Don't store your secrets in Git, and that's kind of like this. That's something that we've wanted from day one to make sure that everybody understands. Like secrets don't belong in Git. You can get a lot of trouble, lose a lot of money. Like there's just it's never good. And the other thing, so what in the case of being optional, ACM is also optional. We use it quite a bit just because we're Red Hat, and it makes a lot of sense when you're doing multi-cluster management. But if you don't have to have ACM, or you don't have ACM, right? You don't have an ACM subscription, you don't have to use it. And so like it's built in a way that you can remove the application from here, you can remove the resources that it configures, and you can still deploy your applications. Multi-cluster management with multiple Argos gets a little tricky because then you have to define those Argo resources within your downstream Argo, so that way you know where those resources are going to be. So just know it's possible to not have ACM, but it is going to take a little bit of extra work to get the multiple Argo configuration going. And then again, we just have more applications, right? So we have our config demo application and our hello world application. And hello world is a basic HTTP app, right? It's hello world, right? And that's exactly what it does. Config demo it's pretty much the same thing, but the difference is that config demo uses external secrets. It uses it deploys with that external secret. So it's got that dependency on Vault being in place. It's got the dependency on Vault being configured and stuff like that. And again, we have this imperative action section here. And this, again, if you have things that you need to do imperatively for your application, or maybe for your organization, maybe you have to run a security, I don't know, whatever you have to do that's manual, that's where you would put this. All right, so now let's hope Podman doesn't blow up on my Mac and we can run this thing. So I'm going to use main. Actually, I won't use main. I'll use commons. All right, so to deploy this, I just run pattern sh make install. Now, we were talking about prerequisites earlier, and it was like, oh yeah, all you gotta do is bring your own cluster, but that's if you're doing the UI. If you're gonna deploy it on, if you're gonna deploy using this, like the make, then you're gonna need at least Podman, or you're gonna need Podman. So that's the other and only prereq, I think.
And the kube config to get there.
Ooh, good call. That was almost bad.
Or you could just do OC login, but right.
Comma 0 off. All right, cool. So now pattern sh, and let's just do make help. And what pattern sh is doing is it's pulling a container image down, and it's running this make help that Michele and Lester put together, and it's just a nice menu. Like it just helps you like understand, like, okay, cool, I got all these things, that all these targets are there that I can use. So make install, this is the one that we're gonna run, and this is gonna do all the stuff, right? Now even though we're running make install and we've done the pattern install from the UI, they're both installing the operator, right? The pattern operator, when you deploy through the UI, is doing all the stuff that we're all the stuff that gets like configured through the make install, by and large, is being done within the pattern itself, right? So like when you go through the operator install in the console, a lot of that stuff is being done with the exception of secrets management. So just keep that in mind. So make show, it's just going to show you like a, here's what's going to get installed. Load secrets is what you would use after you've done a console install deployment. So you'd pull everything down, and then you'd run make load secrets, and then that'll load the local secrets file. So what I'm going to do is run pattern./pattern.sh and then make install. No whammy, no whammy. All right, awesome. And so we're just going through some prereqs again. So this is all within the container. It's just making sure that all the stuff that we need is there. It's running the Helm template. It's going to install, it's going to wait for the Vault namespace to get deployed. But what's happening is this, I'm betting. Oh yeah, you're fine. Yeah, so what this is doing is it's installing the patterns operator, which is installing OpenShift GitOps. And then OpenShift GitOps is getting the initial application, which is going to be that MultiCloud GitOps Hub app, right? And so that's going to be like our root app. So when we were talking app of apps earlier, this is going to be that root application. And so then ACM is going to get deployed. Again, OpenShift GitOps is going to get deployed. Vault, ESO, and then it's going to go into it's going to ingest the secrets file, this template file. And so what's going to happen is we've got our top level key here, and we're just saying, look, the name of the secret is going to be config demo. It's going to be a global prefix within the vault. The name of the key is going to be secret, and then we're saying generate the key for us. Now, maybe I have a password that I like to use. Maybe I like to use Red Hat 123 Bang every time, which is it's pretty bad, but it's true. So I would say, let me go ahead and create this, right? I'd give it, I would generate it for them, or I'd create it myself. But what we're doing is we're saying, hey, if it's not here, if we're not declaring a value, then generate it and use this vault policy. And this is going to be your typical, I think it's like whatever, 8 to 12 or 8 to 15 characters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase, special characters, that type of thing, with the exception of the $, because of the way that the $, gets interpreted when you're passing things through the shell, because it bit us a couple times. But if you have, maybe you're also using the AWS Kubernetes controller and you need to create a credential. I found out about this operator like 2 weeks ago, and it's awesome. And you can pass INI values, right? So you can say, hey, go look for this key within a file, within an INI file. If you've ever used like AWS credentials, you know it's an INI based file, and you can pull those sections out and reuse them.
So Johnny, maybe we can do a deep dive on that in the future SIG meetings.
Okay.
We also have some articles that were written based on training materials that the team put together. Tossing those into the both the notes and the chat here, so you'll have access to them to make it a little easier. What is Helm? What is secrets management? They're both included in there.
So I think now is probably a good time for questions too, because we're waiting on this to. This takes a little bit for the namespace to get found. I don't know why it takes so long, but it's not fast. So if you guys have any questions, or if you want me to go back over anything, let me know.
Well, I'm wondering, William, if you can capture that in the notes doc, any additional sessions or deep dives, that'd be awesome.
Sounds good.
I didn't have a question though.
Uh-oh.
So anybody else that has a question, please feel free to jump in.
Well, there was a question about CA certs and all that, right? So if you're using CA certs, right, you can probably use the framework to do that, but normally that's done at creation of a cluster, right? Unless you're going to update them after you create the cluster. So you could probably do that through the framework. I think there's a limit in Vault if you're going to store a CA cert in Vault and then try to apply it later. So we'll have to do that. I mean, we would have to look into that, right? So, and that was Olive's son. Sorry if I don't pronounce your name right. Yeah.
And David Eberly was asking if this is being run on AWS, and the answer for this demo is yes, it's being run on AWS. We do test against AWS, Azure, and GCP. He also asked if it could be run on on-prem, and the answer is it's yes, but it's important to know that like if you do a bare metal deployment on-prem or even in VMware, you need to make sure that you have a default storage class defined. And that's because Vault will, it requires a PVC, right? It generates a PVC, so it's going to try and map that. So if you don't have a default storage class, then it won't work. So that's where the yes but comes in. So you can't do like an IPI install and expect it to work because it does require storage. And I think that's it, right? For bare metal, there was nothing super crazy about it. It's just make sure that you have the right storage stuff available.
Yeah.
So Johnny, we're at 50 minutes past the hour, so you've got just a little bit more time to show the magic.
Okay. Yep. I won't worry about importing the cluster. But I'll just go back into the console.
Now,
well, actually,
when you did the make install or whatever there, was that going to be changing the repo as well?
Oh yeah. So this I just did the install just to show the difference. But yeah, I can. That's a good point. I'll update the values file once this is done and go in so that way you can actually see what it's like to add a subscription to it, add a new project and stuff like that.
No, what I was asking is, so at the start you were pointing to the validated patterns, MultiCloud GitOps main. Has that changed now because of what you just did?
Yeah, it has changed. So if I look at my remote, you can see that I'm pointing to my repository.
Right, but has the deployment changed up on the hub by doing this?
Oh, I'm using a totally different cluster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah. So you could, by the way, go into the cluster you had, and you could have turned around and updated in the patterns the Git repo and said, okay, now that I forked this, I want to change to my fork, and changed it and put it in your and pointed to the right branch on that fork, and the validated patterns operator would have switched to the new Git repo. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. All right, so let me. Let's see. So what we're going to do. So that.
There is a question, Johnny. I don't know if you want to answer that, or
Uh,
for the local storage, is that ODF, or can it be used NFS? Can an NFS share be used?
so it just needs to be a default storage class. Now, like the NFS, I don't know where like Red Hat stands on this right now, to be honest. Like I know for a long time, like we were very much against like NFS for production workloads, but I think it all depends on your storage system. Like if you're using a RHEL server, a RHEL VM for NFS storage, please expect poor performance. And so I think that that's generally where it comes from. So yes, you could use it, but you might, if this is your home lab, then cool. But if this is like production, you might want something that's a little bit more robust, so that way your users aren't upset that the application is running slow.
Hey, Johnny.
Hi.
Just kind of ask the question, further on that. What do you recommend, outside of NFS? I know ODF is probably there, and from a file share standpoint, what do you recommend for something like that?
Now I guess it depends on your if you're using OpenShift, right? So ODF can be used for a lot of things. You can use ODF for local storage operator. You can use the LVM operator. If you're just using object storage, and I'm not 100% on this, but like I think if it's just object storage, right, you could also use MinIO. I'm just not 100% if MinIO does blocker file. I'm not sure if it does. But yeah, if you're just looking for like an S3 type of storage solution, you can use MinIO or ODF, obviously.
Well, the thing I'm like, ours is on our side, Johnny, is 100% on-prem, and that's why I'm throwing the on-prem questions out there, because we don't use AWS and that type of thing, because it's just more cost prohibitive to do
Right.
that. And so, since we got the space on the data center, et cetera, we want to go ahead and throw, on an on-prem standpoint, because we can control it and that type of thing. That's why I was asking the questions. Does that make sense? Better sense now?
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. So basically, you just need block, right? And so if you can get ODF is part of OPP. So if you have OPP, an OPP subscription, you can also use the upstream, right? You can use the Ceph and Brook and Nuba and all that stuff. So and then that way you can have it all local. If you need that S3 endpoint local into your data center, then you could also use MinIO, right? And that's it's like minio.io is the website. And those are all on-prem services.
And I was going to just mention quickly that in the chat space here, there is a link to a paper that Cisco did. That's an on-prem deployment with storage subsystem. They used Portworx as the persistent storage layer on top of that. One could use like a CSI driver just to install as well. It's just that's not been tested by this team, but you could certainly do something like that.
Marty, go ahead. You raised your hand too. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. As far as kind of what your options are for on-prem stuff, because there are so many, that's one of the reasons that we don't kind of force you down a particular path for patterns. But I've successfully used the LVM storage operator when testing that. There's another thing that we have in process with Cisco that will use the LVM storage operator. Super straightforward and simple to use. ODF works if you want to use that. Portworx also is very capable. It doesn't provide block level storage, but it does provide file level storage via NFS shares, and that works pretty well too. But the only thing that the patterns framework cares about, at least as far as multi-cloud GitOps is concerned, is providing a default storage class, and the default storage class is used for the PVC for Vault. Nothing else in the pattern requires or has any need for persistent storage. Just as far as MCGO is concerned.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, so now the reason why I'm kind of like on these consoles here is because, like, we ran that make install. We're on a totally different cluster now, right? We're on our common 0. And you can see that these operators are getting deployed. And again, we have our validated patterns operator, which is the root. It's a meta operator, right? And then that's deploying OpenShift GitOps. And then that's also deploying Advanced Cluster Manager. Now, if we look at my dogs are, I'm sorry, the wind is blowing, so my dogs are upset. I don't know if you can hear them. And so now we can see that, like, we're starting to get our applications in. We're waiting on the Vault deployment to complete. So I know it shows healthy and synced here, but it's the policies and stuff like that are getting created, and we're waiting for the health to come back as good to go, and then we'll see. Yeah, it's about to start happening. So now we're going to see, like, the external secrets go green here pretty quick, and then we've modified the retries so that way we can get. We built in the eventual consistency because we had an issue with timeouts after a while, and so now what we can do is we can make these changes and we can let them roll out, and then we can let them catch up, and it will eventually get to the point that we need to be, which is pretty awesome when you talk about, like, these rollouts of applications and some of these, like, complex configurations and stuff like that. But if we also needed to, like, maybe tune them, like maybe I need config them, or maybe I need going external secrets before config demo ever comes up, then I could actually create a job or some type of resource that will go out and it'll test that resource, and it'll check the status on it until it's healthy and synced before it moves on and does its thing.
Johnny,
Yo.
I think the dogs were just letting you know that you have about 2 minutes left.
Do we want to do the adding an app and subscription in the next SIG call rather than this one? Because I think it's going to be we'd be rushing it, I think.
Yeah,
unless you want to.
It just finished, so it's up to you.
Sorry, which just finished? The ad.
Yeah, the ad just finished. Like the whole.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah. So if Peggy's got to drop, then we can save it till next time.
Well, you could show it while we're finishing up here.
Okay.
Any final questions while you're going through this? I just want to make sure that people are able to answer or get their questions asked while we're still working through this. It is recorded, yes. Sorry, William. I needed my dogs to let me know to not talk over you. I apologize.
I'll upload to YouTube after this and add the link to the doc, the notes doc. So bookmark that. That's a good source of truth.
Excellent deep dive, Johnny. This has been really great. And I think that we've got plenty of follow-up sessions to do. So he's just showing you what you would have to do here for adding something like OpenShift pipelines. So he's he just added the namespace that's needed. And now he's about to add the subscription. And this will just be really quick. We're at the end of time, but basically what he does here is he adds this, commits it, pushes it, and what happens is OpenShift pipelines will suddenly show up there. Now, in this session here, he's not going to add the, he is going to add a project. He's going to add the project. He's going for it. He's adding the pipelines project, which means that if you have any post operator install configuration you need to do, essentially loading in a specific pipeline, for example, that would be what the Argo piece, that part of the Argo piece does. So here he's doing the commit. For those of you who have remained on, I guess everybody sees this as super exciting. So you're staying for a little while, and then he's going to do the push.
Yep, I did a push. I have to do it my other terminal because
Okay.
the SSH doesn't pull up my credentials. So
swap on over.
yep. So now I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do go back over here.
Sync the cluster wide first.
Yep. Boom.
So just in order to rush this, sometimes it's easier to tell the cluster wide one, hey, by the way, refresh and there's more stuff here, so that it can speed things up instead of waiting for it to refresh and waiting for it to sync. He's forcing it now on the cluster wide one, and now he's going back to and before we drop off, he's going to see the magic happen.
Come on, everybody. Oh, wait, actually, it might be over. It's going to be here because I didn't add any resources on that one. So if I look for,
you should see just the operator starting to load on the console too.
Let's see, subscription. Come on, little buddy. OpenShift pipelines. So we can see my namespace got created, and then that's going to be part of my pipelines application project. So again, this goes down into that tiered control, right? So we're doing all of the cluster scope level things at like pipeline, or I'm sorry, namespaces, projects, applications, and then we're leaving all of the application specific things down in like that cluster group level. And so that's going to be all of your configurations, your instances, and stuff like that. So next time we'll pick up from here and we'll create an instance within pipelines, and then that way we'll see it on the other Argo. But it's a tiered app of apps, Argo of Argo type of deployment.
Thanks for going through this, Johnny. I know that this is really rushed, trying to get everything done before the time ran out.
It's a great segue for next time though. Yeah. Really good.
Sorry to rush you on this. You didn't really get to the end zone.
No, it's okay.
I appreciate the effort. That was awesome.
Well, hopefully Gudvarder. Sorry, dude, I'm trying. Got the most out because this was Gudvarder was the guy that hit me up and was asking about this. So hopefully got a lot out of this.
Thank you. It was really good.
Awesome. And hit me up on Slack or hit us up on Slack, guys, if y'all. Sorry, I didn't mean to say guys. Hit us up on Slack if y'all have any questions or anything like that. And we will respond eventually.
Or we'll see you in 2 weeks. Right back here in 2 weeks.
And remember, tomorrow we have a KubeCon recap too, same time. Otherwise, also 2 weeks for this SIG. Thanks, everybody. That was awesome.
Thank you.
See ya.
Yeah.